Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on Zoom, and also to everyone joining us live on Facebook. Thank you. My name is Stacy Shapiro, and I am the Youth Engagement Specialist at the Summer Youth Employment Program at United Activities Unlimited, and I'm very excited about the wonderful conversation on civic engagement and service that we're going to be having today with a very wonderful group of panelists. We have Councilwoman Debi Rose, we have Assemblyman Charles Fall, and Ruben Seabury, Deputy Chief of Staff for Assemblyman Fall. We have Brian Licata from the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce, and we have quite a lot of members of the Young Leaders of Staten Island. So before we begin with our questions and our panel discussion, I'd like to give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. And I'd like to open up the floor by letting Councilwoman Debi Rose introduce yourself.
Good evening, and I want to thank you for inviting me to be at this very important summit. I am the youth chair for Youth Services Committee for the New York City Council, and summer youth employment, it has and is been our major fight. Today we had a budget meeting, and I was glad to hear that it has been restored to last year's level. And so I thank you for hosting this very important summit about civic engagement. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Councilwoman Rose, and that sounds like very exciting news. We'll also give the floor and then to Mr. Ruben Seabury, Deputy Chief of Staff for Assemblyman Fall.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So my name's Ruben. I work for the Assemblyman. I'm his Deputy Chief of Staff here in his district office. He was just on. I think he got booted, so I'm trying to get him back on now, but he should be on in a second. But I'm very thankful and grateful that you guys are hosting an event like this. I think it's very important that the community and youth be connected to civics and, just be aware of what's going on and the changes that, they themselves have the power to make. So thank you guys for having us on.
Thank you for those wonderful words. And we are very happy to have you here and as the Assemblyman himself as well, once he gets back on. I'd like to next give the floor to Mr. Brian Licata from the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you. As Stacy said, my name is Brian Licata. I'm with the Staten Island Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for having me here today. And I hope that I can inspire somebody to get more involved in their community and just make this a better place.
Great. Thank you again for being here. I know we have quite a few representatives from the Young Leaders of Staten Island. So of course, I'd like all of you to have a chance to introduce yourselves, and we can start with Mr. Kevin Walton, and if you can pass on the mic to the next person, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. I am honored and grateful to be here, to be a part of the youth, and to just have our voices heard, and to see what else we can do to possibly make a difference for our communities. I would love to pass it off to Michael Anamodi to speak briefly.
Thank you, Brother Kev. My name is Michael Anamodi. I go by Mike. Just humbly and pleasure to be here amongst all you guys trying to make a difference in the world. Also a member of the Young Leaders of Staten Island. I'm going to pass it on to another member, my boy Isaiah. Take it away.
Thanks, Mike. First, let me apologize for not having a camera. I'm using my PC. I just don't have a webcam for it. But my name is Isaiah Buffong. I am 21. A co-founder of the Young Leaders of Staten Island. We've been putting on a lot of events throughout the summer and even up until now. We are really, this is a great opportunity, especially since we're live streaming this, that we are able to get our message across and probably, hopefully, light a spark in the youth to get involved in civil and civic engagements.
Great, thank you for being here, Isaiah and Kevin and Michael. Those words, I think, are very well taken, and I hope that since we are live and as well as in this virtual space, I hope it'll be a little more easier or convenient in one sense of the word to get more engagement and get the, I should say, information out there. So before we,
I'm
yeah?
sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I just also need to mention Tarlise. She's here with us. Tarlise, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Oh yes, of course.
Hi everyone, my name is Tarlise. As Isaiah mentioned, I'm also a co-founder of the Young Leaders of Staten Island. I'm happy to be here to hold everyone accountable for the actions and see how we can work together to change our community.
Great, thank you all for being here. And I know Assemblyman Fall came back into the room. Assemblyman Fall, if you'd like to introduce yourself and say a few words.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties. So I just want to, thank you guys for having me on. It's good to see all of you. Good to see our wonderful councilwoman, and I see the young leaders are well represented as well here. So happy to, take any questions you guys may have, and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you for being here. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. I'd like to sort of note that we will have a question and answer session towards the end of this panel. So if any members of our audience have any questions, either those that are in this Zoom room or those that are joining us live on Facebook, we will make sure to get as much of those answered as we can as time permits. So I'd like to first, I guess, open the floor with a very general question to all of our panelists, and that is, in your experience and your perspective, what is civic engagement? And I'd like to first give the floor to Councilwoman Rose.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a very important question, and one that I think most of the young people that are sitting in on this panel tonight are very much aware of. Civic engagement is when you indulge in an activity that it impacts or has an effect on the quality of life in your community, such as the young leaders that we have here today, that they found an issue that they felt was very important and needed to be addressed, and they became involved in that issue. It's involving you in your local community issues and government. And so it's very easy to find a civic issue that you're interested in. I'd like to tell you how I got involved in civic engagement, but I'm not sure if this is the place to tell you.
I mean, you of course can. That actually was one of my later questions, but of course, by all means, please go on.
How I got involved in civic engagement. Well, my mom was a charter member of the National Council of Negro Women, and they were very concerned with some of the educational disparities that were happening in our community. I went to one of their meetings, and and some of the young people on this call might be very familiar with Corporal Thompson Park. I'm old enough to be, I was their age when Corporal Thompson Park was first developed. And at the time, there was nothing in it. It was just an open field. It was just a field. There was nothing there. And I went to a National Council of Negro Women meeting with my mom, and the borough president was there. And I asked him, like, what are you going to do with the park? It's nothing. It's just a dust bowl. And he told me that that was the community board's responsibility. And so I asked him how to, who's the community board? And he told me, and I asked him, how do I become a member of it? And it was through my affiliation with the community board that we got Corporal Thompson Park to look like what it does today with the track field and the basketball courts and the football field. So civic engagement usually starts with something that a person is interested in and wants to change or do something about.
Very well put, and that's an amazing story and an amazing sort of foray into civic work and civic engagement. So thank you for sharing. And sort of on like the side of sort of government and civic, I would also like to give Assemblyman Fall the chance to answer and speak on in your perspective, what is civic engagement, and also on your story and your background into how you got into civic work.
No, so I think the councilwoman hit the nail on the head with this one. I guess in addition to what the council member said, I think it's also, putting, ideas that you have in your community and putting those ideas into motion to make your community a better place. And also I think a big part of that is to have that understanding that government works for you, the people, right? You don't work for the government. And so one of the things that we always try to encourage folks to do is to make sure you're reaching out to your elected officials, you understand all levels of government, holding your elected officials accountable, participating in local meetings, organizing your neighbors to meet a common goal that could all improve our community.
Yeah, so what does civic engagement mean to me? Well, first I'm gonna say I started out with this just like as the rest of them after the tragic death of George Floyd. I personally looked past the whole black versus white, and it just comes down to it's a human rights thing. Like, no one should ever be apprehended the way that he was, even after any heinous crime. For someone to put their knee on someone's neck for almost 8 minutes is criminal. Like that in itself is criminal. So that's why I'm out here. That's why I'm with the team, because it just seems like we're ignoring simple, basic human rights. But in terms of what civic engagement means to me, this is like Brian said, like Kevin said, this is exactly what it is. In my profession, I'm a teacher, so everything I do now is for the next generation coming up. I want to lead the pathway for them because, by God's grace, I grew up, I had a great childhood. My parents did their best to show me both sides of the world. And, I had a unique experience going to Catholic school, then to public school, and, seeing the difference between the two, experiencing different situations between, obviously different races and different placements give you different experiences. So that's how I see it. And I'm coming to civic engagement events like this with an open mind. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Michael, for your thoughts. I think that is something that a lot of us can resonate with. And of course, I'd like to give a chance to Tarlise to speak on your civic engagement story.
I mean, like my fellow members said, it all started when we watched George Floyd like murdered on TV, and we couldn't do nothing about it. But also, it started for me when I was in high school, and I was with Global Kids, and also in my neighborhood when I started a community club where young people could come together to make change within our community. So, like Isaiah said, civil involvement can include anything like a single post online or just working within your community.
That's also an important note, yes. And all of you mentioned that there are various forms of civic engagement, from post to like what Brian said in terms of voting. And I think it's sort of a very broad range. And that leads sort of into my next thoughts. As you all mentioned, that the point of this, I should say also this panel, is to start a conversation, and especially with the youth, all of the youth that are here in this Zoom room, all the youth that are watching this on Facebook, all the youth that will watch this in their own time or just in general. And I think youth, as you all mentioned, are like the starting point, and they're like the next generation. They are going to be like they are the future of tomorrow. So I'd like to sort of ask your opinions on how we can really sort of start this conversation with youth. Like I know, Tarlise, you mentioned you had a club in school, but what are other ways we can actually sort of bring this conversation to youth so that they can actually set the agenda on how we can talk about civic engagement and ways they can get involved in their communities? And I'd like to first give Councilwoman Rose a chance to speak on that.
I just want to say, you don't have to let me go first all the time because I'm obviously the oldest here. And this is a youth summit, so we want to hear from them. But I
just know that I know you are a little limited on your time, so I just wanted to make sure we get to hear your thoughts and your insights, but it's noted.
But how do we get young people engaged? I think that it's very easy, because what we'll do is young people, if they think about it as being the change that they want to see, then they will be able to they will find something that they want to be involved in. It's really important when we look at examples of civic engagement and why people get engaged. It's what they feel passionate about. And this group has already participated in some of, I think, the most important civic engagement issues that we've seen in just the last year. I know many of the young people on this call participated in the census. The census is so important, and I think through their work, we were able to get a higher response in Staten Island than we had in previous censuses. And voting rights, the fact that people young people went out and registered people to vote, that they saw the interconnectivity of how important it was to be a voter, to help address the issues of social injustice, racial inequality, criminal justice issues. Young people were able to see the interconnectivity of these issues, and they got involved in voter registration drives. Some were involved in environmental issues. We saw Greta Thunberg come all the way from I'm not sure, Sweden, wherever she's from in Europe. She came across the ocean to make a point about how important climate change is and global warming is. And so I think it's about finding your passion and turning that passion into a directed, structured, productive kind of energy where you're moving forward to accomplish, a goal. And again, to be the change that you want to be and see. And I hope I answered the question, because I forgot the question.
No, thank you. That was very, very insightful and very informative. But yeah, like I think it is important to open the conversation, to start the conversation, and that's what I want to sort of gauge from our panelists is from your experiences, your insights. What are the best ways to sort of start this conversation, to set this conversation and set the agenda on.
And I think a good way to start people involved in civic engagement is to get them involved in structures that already exist. For me, it was the community board. I got involved in the community board very early, as I said, as a result of a conversation with the borough president, and was able to give voice to the issues that were important to me. That's when I learned what all the issues were in the North Shore, which really led me to move on and to run for city council, because of seeing those things that weren't being addressed. And so there's the community board, there's student government in school. People don't give that a lot of value, but that's where you begin to develop some skills. And I was the vice president of my senior class, and I had a lot to say about certain things that happened in the school. And so, school government is really an important place to be. And there's all these meetings that people neglect to go to, where their voice can be heard and they can really make a difference. There's the police precinct council meetings. Yeah, there are when elected officials have hearings and community meetings. There are all kinds of civic groups, some of which are represented here on this summit. So there are a lot of ways to get in, or just like Isaiah and Michael and Kevin and Tarlise was saying, it could be something that's sparked by a current event, something that happens that you feel very passionate about. I know we all felt very passionate about what happened with George Floyd. And that, in fact, was the impetus, or that was the spark that led to, their activism and their engagement in civic government.
Yeah, that's right. But it's not necessarily a good thing that I.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
No, I'm not saying that's what you're saying. It's for me, but the fact that George Floyd had to die, and that's the reason I got into the position I'm in, and the passion I have, it feels kind of backhanded, where there are these programs that are out, and that you are saying there are these programs out here, but the people who are in charge of that aren't coming down to tell me that. They're not telling me, hey, there are these things that you can do that can help you with your community, or these are things that you can do that can help you with your life. We have all these programs. Why aren't there people here
to promote the necessary
but I feel I just lost the thought. Sorry, I just lost this thought. I'll get back to it.
Yeah, that was an excellent point, but it's something that also does ring true. Like you said, it is. I mean, it's important to respecting, sort of pay tribute to the reasons that we do sort of get passionate. But of course, it was a very, very unfortunate event and very unfortunate circumstances that led you and everyone, young leaders. But yes, do you?
Yeah, I just got it back.
Agree.
But even if there are those outliers of people who come into the community and tell you, hey, there's this program going on, that person usually isn't from my community. So if I don't have that trust, if I don't have that connection with you, I'm not really going to understand what you're telling me. I'm not going to want to go with you to these programs and open up my life. I'm air quoting. I really wish I had a camera. And open up these doors to a possibility that I don't see in my community. I'm not hearing that there are these possibilities in my community from my community, but I'm hearing it from an outside source. So being able to build a trust with those people that you want to help, I feel will bridge a bigger, will build a bigger bridge in the gap that we have now.
Yeah, thank you. That is an excellent point, and that's also something that I wanted to mention, and that is why we are hosting this panel. And sort of on the other side of that issue is, how do we bring youth to the table, and how do we ensure that their voices are actually heard and that they're listened to, not just being heard, that their passions, their thoughts, their actions are actually being put into action themselves. And of course, that was sort of not really a question, but also a question in and of itself. But yes, if anyone else from the young leaders would like to speak, how you in your opinion, how we can actually ensure that the youth voice is being heard?
Absolutely. To piggyback on what Isaiah said, I really do feel like the best way to connect to youth is to build relationships. There is no connection without a relationship being built, and there's no trust without relationships being built. So unfortunately, in our communities and the youth in our communities, we don't know that these things are going on until it's too late, until we're set in our ways. I learned that there was an actual community board meeting, and there were assemblymen and our councilwoman, these type of things. When I joined youth, and I was ripe into my 20s already. And I learned that not because I got it again from one of the community people from the community. I actually got that from UAU itself, being in the building and them having the space to be there. If I wasn't in another, let's say, for instance, if I was in another place for UAU, like Stapleton or something like that, I wouldn't really know that it was going on. But because it was being held in the West Bryant building, I was able to understand, and I joined. So it's very key that there's relationships being built, especially with youth. With the youth, speaking from a youth perspective, if I don't know you and I don't know who you are, number one, I'm trying to read you from that um, first initial standpoint right there. And first impressions is everything. And then another thing, I'm not going to really trust what you're saying because I don't know who you are. So building relationships is very, very, very key in order to get people involved, especially young people, and for them to even feel like what they're saying is going to be taken and put into action, or is even being upheld in the right manner. I know Charlize has something to say upon that subject as well.
Yes, of course, by all means.
Sorry. Just to add on to what Kevin and Isaiah said, I also feel like it's a sort of accountability for the officials that are within the community. Like sometimes young people do try to take action, like creating clubs or groups, and they reach out to their local officials and stuff like that, but yet there's no help. So then they feel shut down and they feel like the voices are not heard and they stop trying. So I feel like also within that, we also have to take accountability where there's a conversation that needs to be had between young people and the local officials, not just local officials, but older people within the community. Young people are being supported and they're being trusted as well, because you can come to my community, you vote for me, I'll do this. And the young people give their vote to those officials. They're left alone with no resources and no help. So how can I trust someone, or how can I speak out when I try to and I ask you for help, but you just use me for a vote? So I think that plays into that as well.
Thank you for sharing, Tarlis, and thank you also, Isaiah, Kevin. Those are all some really excellent points. And I am really happy that we do actually have youth, young leaders as part of this panel as well, because you guys are doing an important job yourself of getting that voice out there. So I think, and I appreciate that. And I would like to give a chance to Assemblyman Fall to speak on your insights, your advice as to how we can continue to actually make sure that the youth voice is heard.
One, I think it's very important that folks remember that, every 2 years I'm up for re-election. Every 4 years you have to re-elect the council member. Every 4 years you have to re-elect the borough president. 2 years senator. And during that period, you have to hold your elected officials accountable. You have to make it very clear, what you're looking from your elected officials. Because being in government, it's not easy. There's a lot of hurdles we have to overclimb. I'm telling you this, being an elected officials for 2 years, going on my third year, there are a lot of barriers that we have to overclimb at Staten Island. I'm sure the council member has overcome a lot of barriers that she has to deliver.
Too many to tell you about now.
And I'm not saying that because we're making excuses. This is just the reality. Government is very bureaucratic. There's a lot of red tape. And, I think also these forms are very important so you guys understand that process. I know, when there was, the big push for the police reform bills during the summer that we passed at the state level, one of the things that, I was strongly advocating for was making sure that, these reform bills are also tied to the state budget. Because if you think about how the state budget is actually passed, there's three people in a room. It's the governor, the speaker of the assembly, and the speaker of the Senate. And I personally think that a large percent, if the state budget is over $190 billion, the public should at least have maybe a 30% say on where those funds are going. And that's one of the things that I feel, I'm going to continue to push for. And I think the public should continue to be vocal about, so we could have more. It's like very similar, to my opinion, to like what we see with participatory budget. There's a certain amount of funds that the community gets to determine where that money goes to. But I think those funds should be much, much more bigger because we're talking about billions of dollars here. And so, my office is, me personally, I do want to, meet with more folks, right? Because I do understand that there are a lot of different challenges that's going on in every single neighborhood. And the best, in order for me to deliver on that front, or have a better idea of how, we could do better in that area, is to talk to the people that are on the ground, such as you folks and many folks that aren't even on this call.
Can I piggyback on what Assemblyman Fall said? I engage in participatory budgeting, and thank you, Assemblyman, for mentioning that. That is like the reason why I did it is so that people in the community in all of my district will have a say in the budget process. I get $5 million that I have a little discretion about where those funds go for my district in Staten Island. I've given $1 million of those funds to anybody in my district, especially young people in my district, to be a part of participatory budgeting, where they decide where that $1 million will go. And I have to say, I've done it now 4 years, and I have to say, we put it out on social media. We do everything that we can to recruit. Anybody can be a part of this process, and we oftentimes don't get a lot of people who go through the whole process with us. But as a result of it, we have gotten a community center enhancement, a basketball court enhancement in Mariners Harbor. We got computers for schools, because that came from people in the district, and young people have been a part of that process. So that's a very good place to start learning about government and the budget process. It really works. It's a good exercise in what we go through on a larger scale, because the city agencies will come back and say to you that, I'm sorry, we can't do it because of X. So it's a realistic exercise in government at a very basic level that everybody can participate in.
Yeah, that is very wonderful information. Thank you for sharing, Councilwoman Rose. And I think that participatory budgeting is something that it is something that's a great way to sort of put your, so I guess I sort of put the foot in the door of to get more involved in understanding of government and how it functions. But I'd also like to sort of bounce to Mr. Licata from the Chamber of Commerce, since the Chamber sort of sits between the community and elected officials. So how does the Chamber engage and support youth, and how do they help? How do you help with civic accountability?
It's really about being involved, and hearing from Councilmember Rose about the community boards. That's where a lot of people get their start, and I was very involved in the community boards when I was young, also. And it's not just community boards; it's nonprofits. A lot of the nonprofits that are on Staten Island will reach out and ask, How do we form a youth advisory board? And they're looking to actively do that. You have collective impact projects that are on the island that are looking to do the same thing. If you're not there, and I know that this is the very hard thing to understand, a lot of times you don't see yourself in these groups, so you do not join the groups. It sounds like a good motive. Unfortunately, it keeps your voice quiet. And what you have to really focus on here is thinking about how do you get your voice heard. You can do what Kevin did. You can start a movement, and it's fantastic. If you don't see the group to join, you start that group and you do it yourself. You can also figure out, well, why is my voice important? Anytime that we do anything on the island, as far as the chamber is concerned, we take, the pulse of the island, business community, residential community. There are more people on Staten Island younger than me than there are my age and older. I am now starting to go into that demographic. So, the young people who are on here that feel that their voice isn't important. When we talk about marketing, when we talk about, marketing dollars, the money that you spend, voting dollars is the same. Your vote is very, very important. Your, marketing value, how much you spend in a company, what you do, it's very important. It's very valuable, and you need to know that. You need to know how valuable you are. So this does come across a lot, and it comes in every walk of life, whether we're talking about, the business community or we're talking about getting engaged. Right now, what we have happening is we have people who are being quiet and they don't like what they're seeing. And we have people who are being vocal about it. You have to be vocal. It is the vocal people who get their will done. That's how it is. And I'm sorry, you could be the nicest person and you could love your elected official and don't really, say anything, when you disagree with them. You can be vocal about it. You can tell them how you feel. It doesn't mean that they're going to change what they do. But when there's enough of you, when enough of you come together and say, we feel this way, they have to listen. So really think about that. And like I said, when we look at things, advisory boards, nonprofit boards, business boards, we're very cognizant of the fact, are we representing the community? Everyone wants to have a diverse population. Everyone wants to have young adults. If every group that we had consisted of 65 and older white men, it wouldn't be representative of the population of Staten Island, and that's not good business. So we do need to have a very good mixture. It's very hard to be that first person in the group. Be that first person. Bring a friend with you. Get involved. That is how you start to grow strong, and your voice is counted. So like I said, as far as the business community, we look at everybody the same. Marketing and voting, it's the same exact concept. You really have a value associated to you, and you have to know your worth. You're very worthwhile to everybody.
Thank you for those words. I think that all sort of sounds, that all resonates, and it's all very, very sound and very, very true. And I want to sort of build off of, like you all have mentioned, it starts off with public dialogue, and that is sort of where the key is. And I know a lot of you mentioned that accountability is one of the key points or sort of key values that we need to address when it comes to having public dialogue, like in terms of accountability by public officials to the people that elect them into office. And I'd like to sort of ask all of you, what other keys about like points and values and ideas that are also important to know and to keep it on top of mind, be cognizant of about in terms of opening this public dialogue and actually having a public dialogue that it doesn't just end at the end of the conversation. It actually brings forth change and action. And if anyone would like to speak on that first, by all means.
Sorry, my headphones got a little low. Do you mind just saying that question again?
Oh yeah, of course. Like you all mentioned, public dialogue is important, and I think it is it's the first step and it is the most important step, but it also is just the first step. So my question basically is, what are ways that we can, like, what are the top points to note that about how we move from dialogue to action? In addition to holding your elected officials accountable, what are other values and things that should also be, we should be cognizant about?
Right, yeah. So once you know who your elected officials are, you want to know their policies, right? What do they stand for? Are they going to represent your community? Are they best for your community? So first is that dialogue, right? Getting involved. Second is doing that research, right? You want to know who's up next, who's about to leave, who's coming in. You need to know these things to then move on to other steps like marches, rallies, debates, things along that line to also help hold those officials accountable, right? So when there is a debate, you can talk to those, the officials are right there with you. You can talk to them, you can question them right then and there, right? Writing a letter to them, you never know when you're going to get back. So being that leader, being that person who wants to take the next step, you have to become present. So you have to always be in their face. You have to start talking. You have to start implementing actions you would like to see in your community.
I'd like to offer the floor to anyone else who would like to add on to that.
I'm sorry, Stacey. I actually have another Zoom at 6 o'clock. I didn't know if you guys wanted me to take on any other questions before I dip, or just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, well, thank you for noting that. But we do have a question from Facebook, which the user asks, when is the next discretionary hearing? If you know, or if anyone else.
So I know that the councilwoman could speak to that. But what I want to encourage people to do on January 21st, the Parks Department is going to be having a listening session at lines related to the new Cromwell Center. So I want to encourage a lot of people to go there. And of course, we all know that our councilwoman was very instrumental in securing the funding for that project. But that's going to be at 6 p.m. on the 21st. And we just want to, another version of civic engagement to help encourage people. But I'll let the council member talk about the preserved budget since that's a city council matter.
Great, thank you. I just want to give you a chance to say any parting words before you go.
Well, look, thank you for this opportunity. I think this is a really good discussion. And I do look forward to more discussions like this, not like, in the public. Obviously, we're gonna have more meetings with folks that are on this call to talk about how to make our community a better place. We also want to see results as a result of that, not just rhetoric, right? That's very important to me as a leader. So thank you so much, Stacey, for having me. Good to see all you folks, and good to see Councilwoman, and I'll talk to you guys very soon. Take care.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Stacey. Bye-bye.
I would like to continue on the conversation, though. I know, as Assemblyman Fall said, Councilwoman Rose, you would be better to speak on when is the next discretionary budget hearing.
Sure. We're beginning our budget season right now. In fact, today we discussed the preliminary budget with the mayor today. And that's where I got the good news about SYEP being restored to its last year's, the previous pre-COVID levels, where we served 75,000 young people. And this last summer, because of COVID, we were only able to serve 35,000. So happily, we will be able to serve 70,000 young people from start. Last year we were zeroed out. My office, we have a budget workshop where we inform the community about how they can access city council funding. City council has several levels of funding. There's discretionary funding that I have some say over, and then there is initiatives that are 5 borough or citywide programs that some of those funds are brought to each of the districts get a portion of. And then there's the total budget where people, we do the budget, the $92 billion budget for all of New York City. So my discretionary money, we will be having a hearing, a workshop to tell people how to access that and what the process is. Unlike with the state, we only have one opportunity to discuss for people to come and ask us for money, and there's a process. And if you don't engage in this process at this time, there's no other opportunity for groups to get funding from the city council, which is very important. People sometimes, will talk to their other elected officials on different levels of government, state and federal, and they might be able to assist them with some funding. We only have this window, and if it is not taken advantage of, then there's nothing I can do, even as little as providing a bus to go somewhere or to buy sodas for a community event. So it's very important that anyone who is interested in city council funding should attend our budget workshop, where we tell you what the parameters are and what the requirements are and what you have to do in order to qualify to be, considered for funding. And we're having that workshop on January 28th at 6 p.m. It will be in my e-blast. It'll be on my social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So it's very important that people take advantage of that. I am not sure about participatory budgeting this year. That's quite an involved process that usually we start in the fall, putting things in place. Because of COVID, we have not done that. The structure isn't there on the city council, on the full council level. So I'm not sure if we'll be involved in participatory budgeting this year. But I do encourage anybody who wants to have a say about maybe where our funding, our funds are spent, how they're spent, should come to our workshop and find out what the process is.
Great, thank you so much for outlining that process.
Oh, and I just want to say, and we, all the time, the city council has hearings. We will be having a hearing as the Youth Services Committee. We'll be having budget hearings once the preliminary budget is, it's been made public, and before we adopt the budget. So again, those are the sources that we have to get the word out.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'd also sort of like to give Mr. Brian Licata a chance to speak on that, and also on the question that we have in the chat in regards to how does the underdog or like the small non-for-profit get help in the same agencies that get funding?
I love reading the budget analysis that comes out of the city to actually look at where the budget originated, what areas, the mayor's office and city council went back and forth, and then in the end, how much funding actually went to, each area. It's a good indication because you can tell where your city council members are fighting to get more funding, and where the mayor is either winning or losing battles over certain funding issues. What's really important to know is how the process works. New York City is very complicated. Funding is not a simple process. You have funding that comes from multiple city agencies. You have funding that comes from city agencies that relies on state funding or federal funding. So you have to know where the trace is. Historically, grassroots organizations have a harder time receiving funding than the well-funded organizations, especially when we look at larger contracts. So, a grassroots organization, I think one of the first things that you want to look at, make sure, a nonprofit, get your 501c3 status. This way you can receive funding. When you receive funding and you have your tax ID number, you can start to apply for discretionary grants from the local council members. Then you can start looking at the larger RFP process. The city has a great site, the HHS Accelerator, where you can see almost all of the city contracts that are available and what are the requirements to receive those contracts. DOE has a separate system, and you can go on and find out how to become a vendor for the DOE and then how to actually get, higher contracts. Process is very complicated. Make friends with the Staten Island Not-for-Profit Association. They love bringing in young adults, teaching them the processes, showing them how this works. If you're a grassroots organization, I would say that making friends with other nonprofits to find out how did they get started, where did they get their funding from. I would like to tell you that Staten Island is a place without competition, but that just would not be true. I mean, we're all competing for different contracts. Finding out who is going for which contracts and going for the contracts that other people are not going for, or that you're more in line to get because it aligns with your mission and your vision, is very important. So for anyone that's really interested in this, feel free. You can always reach out to me afterwards. Love to make a connection with the Nonprofit Association so you can learn more. If you like participatory budgets and you like mathematics and you're willing to sit down and look at Excel sheets, be more than happy to spend time and show you how to analyze some of the budget items.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and that you can also take charge. Now that you have that knowledge, you will be able to be in that position to where you can excel a lot further than you ever dreamt to be.
Yes, thank you so much for the points.
I just want to address something that Kevin said in the chat about the systems that are in place are not currently working in terms of engaging youth. I just want to say that that there are these systems. They are institutional, and so in city council, each of the systems have a place for young people to be a part of. But it's difficult if young people don't take advantage of it. So it's like I have tried to meet with young leaders and other youth groups to talk about government and what's going on, and haven't been able to make that happen. And so in the absence of being able to talk to young people where you are, young people are empowered to be a part of these established groups. And I welcome you to be a part of any group that I'm a part of. And I'm going to extend my offer again to the young leaders and all of the young people on this summit and who are not on this summit, that I'm willing to come and talk about government, to talk about how finances work and how they can be engaged civically. So, I look forward to having a conversation with you after the summit. And that goes for anybody who wants to, anybody who would like to.
Kevin could defend himself on this point.
No,
but
there's no need to defend. There's please, and in full transparency, I just want to make it clear, we understand that it's very hard for our elected officials to do their jobs, them having the different responsibilities that they have, going back and forth to Albany and doing the different things they have to do, as well as being connected to the community. So I just want to make that very clear. There's no need to defend. I don't feel attacked. This is a conversation.
I wasn't
But
in it.
I just wanted, absolutely. But I just wanted to expound upon the fact that the systems that are unfortunately are in place that are absolutely institutional, and we know it's going to take many, many of years and a great amount of young people to speak up about such a thing for it to change. But they're just not working. And I believe, I know it's a tough thing to say, but unfortunately, it's a time for those systems to change, those systems to adapt
You're
to
right.
the new era. But you're right. It takes our voices to be involved in those institutional places in order for that to actually be heard, in order for change to come, and it takes me back to Martin Luther King Jr.'s time, and it showed how he was doing many things for the Black community, but there was a disconnect with the youth, and it showed. So it's very important, again, and going back to the point, I don't want to go over and over and over, but the relationship building is very key. The relationship building is very key. But in terms of knowing that, we must also understand that young people's realities, and when you go up in the age bracket, our realities change. A really key reality for the adult is a mortgage. A key reality for a young person is to graduate high school, is to move from their parents' houses. So meeting the young people on their levels and meeting them where their perspective lies is very key in order to get them to the places that we need to be, in order for us to forge those relationships and us to be basically willing in order to get to those places. Because we know that we are able, because I've never been abrupt to so many different ways that youth can be engaged in government. I've never known, all these years on Staten Island, not blaming anybody, but I really think, again, it goes back to the institutional ways in which it is being given to these communities. And it definitely matters.
Yeah, that point rings so
Just to add on to what Kevin said, I'm sorry, just like also trust, like young people, if they don't trust anyone, it's very hard for them to connect with them because they feel like if this person is not trustworthy, why would I connect with them? You lose interest right away because they feel like you're not trustworthy. So one thing is building that trust within the community with the young people. And also, like Kevin said, get into a level as well. If you put those two together, there's definitely going to be a change within young people and older people as well.
Yes, and just expound. I'm sorry, really quick. Again, going back to different realities. I understand that in your position, Debi Rose, and all of our council people, your reality is legislation. Your reality is getting certain things passed for our communities to care about. But the young people don't have a knowledge of such a thing. They really don't. They're not on that type of mental frame to even be thinking about that. So this is where, again, the disconnect happens because we don't know about the legislation. We don't know how it affects our communities. And we also want to be, you also have to come to a youth on their playing field, so to speak. And I know you do that in a multiple ways, such as parks and doing all of the sports programs that you do and everything like that. But at this time, it really needs to change, and it needs to be I guess altered for the new age.
And I'm glad to hear that, and what my only point was that we have to all make ourselves available so that we can have the dialogue, so that we can, do the change that needs to, come about. And, and for people to understand like what exists now, how do you access that, and what is it that you want to see, and how do we implement that, so that there's a connectivity about it. So I'm excited. I'm excited about these conversations. I've been wanting to have this kind of dialogue. So I welcome you any time that you want to have that, because you're absolutely right. Until we have those conversations, it's difficult to make any kind of changes.
Yes, you guys, you've all said so many important points and important notes and things to be cognizant of. I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you for being here tonight, for taking your time to helping to continue to foster this safe space where we can have authentic dialogue around these civic challenges, and discussing how we can take next steps and actually ensuring that our dialogue turns into action. So I really appreciate all of you taking the time for being here. And I'd like to give, of course, everyone a chance to say some parting words, some last either insights or bits of advice or anything you would like to share before we end off for tonight. Would anyone care to start?
On behalf of the young leaders, thank you so much for having us. Just want to say we are an extension of the community and of the young people. So we want to make sure that we make these type of talks available to everyone. So I know that we probably will be creating a summary of this panel and putting it on platforms just to continue to bring the awareness. And I look forward to meeting with our elected officials more, especially Debi Rose as well, in order for us to get this information to our communities on the grounds level. Thank you.
Oh yes, we have a question in the chat to the young leaders. How can other youth who are watching this either on this Zoom or on Facebook get involved with your efforts or bring similar efforts to their borough? Because I know we have quite a few members in the audience who are from Brooklyn.
Right. Right now, we're in the process of expanding ourselves. So this is a very good time to reach out to us. You can reach out to us on our email, youngleadersofstatenisland@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on our Instagram, youngleaders_SI. Our Twitter, it's leaders. Hold on 1 second for the Twitter. But you can always reach out to us, let us know you're interested. And then when we're able to open up ourselves and really come out with our revamp, we'll definitely want to have as much help as possible, as much youth engagement as possible, because we want to be that next step in having our lives flourish.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Of course, Councilwoman Rose, what are your last thoughts, last words?
I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Stacy. I want to thank UAU for having this forum, for bringing about a conversation and dialogue about civic engagement. It's so important. We've seen how people getting out in the street to talk about how important Black Lives Matters is and social justice. We've seen how important it was when young people got out and participated in the census. There are all of these issues and things that will help make our communities better. And I'm so glad that you gave us a forum in which to talk about how to expedite that. I am not tech savvy, so I was trying to put in the chat how people could access, my workshop, because I think it's really important that that you can't change things if you don't know or understand how things happen. So I really want to encourage anybody who's interested in how to access my discretionary funding, that you can RSVP at Councilwoman Debi Roses. And I'm reading this slow because by the time I put it in the chat, everybody will be home. So it's Councilwoman Debi Rose's annual budget workshop, google.com. And if that doesn't work for you, just email Cortez, CORTEZ @council.nyc.gov. And I apologize. See, that's why we need young leaders, because you would be able to do that, much better than I can. But but thank you. And, I just want to reiterate how important you are and your voices are. And I love your energy. And I only want to help amplify you because you're right. You have the energy and I think you're going to make great changes. So thank you again for having me, Stacy. And UAU, you're doing a wonderful job. Your SYEP program, is tops in New York City. It makes me proud to be the youth chair and have UAU SYEP as one of the programs that are a part of the budget process.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Rose, and we'll definitely make sure to share the workshop info on our social channels. And again, also like to thank
you, Brian. Brian did that. Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
And of course, leading to Brian for your last words, parting thoughts.
Just remember, everybody, that good change or bad change, no one likes change. Everybody resists change. So whatever it is that you're trying to do, it's not easy. Stick with it. Keep working at it. Bring more people on board. And like I said, more voices, you're stronger. Things will change.
Couldn't have said it better myself, and a wonderful way to wrap up tonight. Again, thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. This has really been such a truly amazing dialogue and conversation, and I'm really sad to see it end, but really thank you all for your time and your service and your engagement to the Staten Island community.